Welcome to your definitive starting point for Golden State Warriors news. Here the idea is simple. Deliver what really matters about the team, with behind-the-scenes updates, front office decisions, training updates, a clear read of the roster, game-by-game performance, and, of course, the hottest NBA rumors. No fluff, and with the right context for you to understand what's happening right now and what could become the next big bombshell. If you want to follow the Warriors with direct information and that perspective of someone who lives this franchise every day, this is the place. So leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because we don't let any important move slip by. Let's begin. There's a type of rumor that isn't born as a random internet whisper. It's born as a collective feeling that something big is being considered behind the scenes, even if no one publicly owns it. And that's exactly the energy surrounding the possibility of real Warriors' interest in Giannis Antetokounmpo. This isn't empty wishful thinking or a video game fantasy. The conversation holds up because it fits two realities every fan understands: the current competitive window and the need to place next to Stephen Curry a dominant physical force who changes the blueprint of a playoff series. The thing is, when you're talking about a player of that magnitude, the debate stops being, "It would be nice to have him," and becomes, "What would you be willing to sacrifice to change your era?" Because a star of this level doesn't arrive out of kindness or in a symbolic package. The real price always comes in the form of big choices, painful decisions, and often the surrender of part of the identity that helped build what the team is today. And that leads into the most interesting part of this scenario: the logic of a multi-team negotiation. When a franchise like Milwaukee considers, even if only hypothetically, moving its top pillar, the priority tends to be one thing: future assets and flexibility. That means strong picks, young players with high ceilings, and contracts that don't lock a rebuild before it truly begins. From that angle, it's natural to imagine that certain Warriors' veteran contracts wouldn't be the main destination Milwaukee would want in a full redesign. This is where the possibility of a third team starts to make sense as a practical gear in the machine. Chicago shows up in this kind of rumor not because it's a pretty narrative, but because there's functional logic. A team that needs to toughen its defensive identity and install a daily standard of competitiveness could see huge value in absorbing a veteran with immediate impact and leadership. For a roster trying to level up mentally and tactically, that piece could act as a culture catalyst, not a temporary patch. With that, the skeleton of this rumor gains a more organized structure than it seems at first glance. The Warriors target Giannis as the ultimate transformation of their competitive ceiling. The Bucks, if they ever opened that door, would be looking for a package centered on relevant youth and a robust volume of first-round picks. And the Bulls could help absorb the salary and competitive piece that doesn't fit with a full reset, while also gaining a player who raises the defensive level and the locker room weight. For Golden State, the toughest analysis isn't only financial or mathematical, it's philosophical. Because Giannis wouldn't be a fine adjustment, he would be an identity shift within the same era. With him, the Warriors would have a constant threat of physical imposition, transition dominance, and rim pressure, something that changes the kind of response an opponent has to prepare. Instead of depending on a perfect script of shot-making and rhythm to survive against the strongest teams, the Warriors would start imposing inevitable dilemmas, the kind that wear down any defense over a series. In practice, the offensive impact is easy to visualize. A guard who distorts the floor with absurd gravity and a power forward who attacks space like a high-speed train create a duo that forces bad choices all the time. If the defense stretches to contain the perimeter, it opens lanes. If it collapses to protect the rim, it gives up cleaner looks. And when you combine that geometry with disciplined wings and pieces that understand off-ball movement, the offense stops being predictable and becomes a system with multiple layers of punishment. Defensively, the conversation gets even heavier. Giannis is the kind of player who puts out fires before they even turn into real flames. He protects the rim, switches with agility, covers holes in rotations, and turns small opponent misreads into easy points the other way. On a team that already values intelligence and defensive communication, he would be a multiplier of aggression and confidence. But none of those benefits comes without the emotional cost that hits fans. An operation of this size usually requires the departure of a figure who symbolizes the team's competitive DNA. And that's what divides the fan base so deeply. It's not just who leaves and who arrives. It's what that trade would say about who the Warriors are today and who they're willing to become, to give Curry a title structure at the absolute limit of what's possible. The detail many people ignore is that in rumors like this, future picks carry massive weight, not only because of the number, but because of the risk embedded in them. When a franchise sends picks far into the future, it's betting it will stay strong for a long time. And that kind of bet gets more delicate when the team makes a move that concentrates even more responsibility on the present. For the team receiving those picks, they become a kind of premium insurance against a later drop-off. That's why, within a cold logic of basketball and management, this three-team trade hypothesis doesn't look like pure fantasy. It looks like a construction based on overlapping needs. One side chasing an immediate ceiling, another chasing a structured restart, and a third chasing defensive culture and competitive leadership. When those three desires align in the same framework, the rumor stops being just noise and becomes a possibility that feels scary precisely because it isn't absurd. And this is where the central point of the Warriors' current moment comes in. The league doesn't forgive anyone who lets nostalgia drive for too long. Windows don't warn you when they're going to close. They just start getting tighter with every delayed decision. And when the chance to imagine an era shift within the era itself shows up, the real question isn't whether the move is comfortable. It's whether it's necessary to give the team a shorter, more realistic path back to the top. This conversation is still in speculation territory, but it already plays an important role. It exposes the priorities and risk appetite of every franchise involved. And for Warriors fans, it also works as an uncomfortable mirror of reality. Because looking at this type of rumor is admitting the team is clearly evaluating options that go beyond incremental adjustment. It's evaluating the kind of bet that could redefine the franchise's weight in the conference all at once. And when this kind of rumor gains strength around the league, it almost always triggers another side effect: the pressure to also find more targeted, cheaper solutions that fix structural roster problems. And that's where the second story of the moment begins to take up space in fans' minds, especially among those who feel the team still needs more size, more interior presence, and a smart renewal plan without tearing down the present. This second line of conversation, which many people treat like a parallel plan, could actually be the perfect complement to the bigger scenario involving a possible hunt for a superstar. Because when a team flirts with a massive gamble, it also needs intelligent, controlled-cost moves to keep the roster functional around that core. And that's where the name Kai Sotto emerges as a possibility that, even far from guaranteed, speaks directly to a need Warriors fans have talked about for a long time: more physical presence, more rim protection, more rebounding, and a real alternative for games where the paint becomes a minefield. What fuels this interest isn't just social media hype. It's the kind of progression that grabs any analytics department's attention. Kai has been showing consistent growth, combining rare size with better mobility than many expected when he first started earning meaningful minutes in a competitive professional league environment. He isn't living off flashes. He's building an image of a player who understands the game in layers, not just through strength or height. When you look at recent performances that resonated strongly among fans and analysts, what stands out isn't only the scoring. It's the way he connects different moments of a game. Sometimes he starts by imposing his presence in the paint, punishing smaller matchups near the basket. Other times he shows up with passing reads that prevent wasted possessions and turn a stalled set into a real scoring chance. That says a lot about on-court maturity, because the modern center doesn't live only on finishing. He lives on decision-making. And the growth of his mid-range shot enters this equation as a detail that changes an opponent's defensive reaction. When a big becomes a reliable threat a couple steps from the rim, he forces his defender to step out a little more. And that extra inch of space can be the difference between a clean layup, an easy pass to a backdoor cut, or a second offensive rebound chance. This kind of detail doesn't show up only in stats. It shows up in the discomfort he starts creating on the other end. For the Warriors, this is especially relevant because of the team's historical style. The franchise has always lived on spacing, pace, reading, and movement. But in several recent phases, the fan feeling has been that the team lacked a more stable anchor for certain specific nights. Nights when the shots don't fall naturally, when the opponent tries to impose physicality and slow the rhythm, when the game turns into a war of rebounds, fouls, and patience. Having a young, tall, steadily improving piece as a rotation option could be a way to reduce that vulnerability without compromising the identity of speed and creation. And here, a bigger picture idea starts to make sense. If the ambition for a top-tier star demands a steep price in assets, finding emerging talents who cost less can be the way to balance the roster's ecosystem. It's like building a puzzle on two scales at the same time. On the big scale, you think about championship ceiling. On the smaller scale, you think about sustainable rotation, bench energy, and practical solutions for recurring problems. Kai, within that logic, wouldn't be sold as an immediate savior, and that's precisely what makes the bet more rational. He would be a low-risk investment with meaningful upside, a player who can be brought along gradually, given targeted minutes, develop defensive reads within an organized system, and benefit from the environment of a franchise that has historically been able to optimize certain specific pieces with the right context. And there's an important symbolic aspect in the fan excitement. When a fan base starts asking this strongly for a name still under construction, that also says something about the perceived roster gap. It isn't just passion for an international prospect. It's the search for a center profile that, even if not ready to be a headliner, brings a dimension that's missing in certain rotations. Someone who changes the team's physical language in specific stretches. If you connect that with the bigger rumor involving a superstar, the narrative fit becomes interesting, because you end up with two paths that don't necessarily cancel each other out. One path of instant impact, the kind of move that changes the conference hierarchy, and one path of base building, giving the team tactical and physical options to survive the details that decide long series. In other words, the Kai conversation helps humanize the discussion about the Warriors' future. It reminds you the team isn't a spreadsheet of star names. It's an organism that needs balance between stars, rotation, growing youth, and pieces that solve concrete-style problems. When a franchise tries to win at the highest level, it needs both big swings and small administrative wins, and that also helps explain why fans are living through such an emotionally intense phase. Because the franchise's current moment demands double choices, choosing between keeping everything as it is or accepting a deep shift in competitive ceiling, choosing between patient investment in youth or maximally accelerating, knowing the emotional and basketball bill can be high. And in the middle of that, names like Kai appear, representing a kind of more accessible hope, more tangible, more connected to the short and mid-term future without needing to implode the identity of the present. At the core, these two stories are about the same thing: direction. A great franchise isn't defined only by what it does when everything is comfortable. It's defined by what it's willing to try when risk is the only bridge to the top. The rumored mega trade, with all the complexity of salaries, picks, and multi-team interests, places the Warriors in a narrative of strategic courage. The conversation about a rising center with potential to fill real roster gaps places the Warriors in a narrative of smart construction. And when both things move together, that sense of "this could explode at any moment" stops being just a catchy line and becomes a snapshot of what the league really is. An environment of fast decisions, short windows, and rare opportunities. That's why the fan who follows closely needs to look at this moment through two lenses. The lens of emotion, which understands the weight of any potential drastic change, and the lens of competitive coldness, which recognizes that the NBA rewards those who act at the exact right timing. Sometimes, the best path isn't choosing only one route, it's building two routes at once. One that aims at maximum immediate impact, and another that strengthens the foundation with smart, lower-cost bets capable of sustaining the team in the details. And that's how everything connects. The big rumor exists because the team's ambition demands a ceiling jump. And the development and rotation rumor exists because no jump of that size survives without a roster that has real answers for different styles of play. The Warriors' future may be getting written precisely in this blend of boldness and pragmatism. If you want to keep receiving analysis like this, with context and no fluff about everything that can change the present and future of the Warriors, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That helps the content reach more fans and ensures you don't miss any important news when the next move starts gaining momentum.